any sort of combination of.
Right.
So it's essentially it's non-local. Okay, all of that would be included.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. And then do you know, I mean, I guess with this policy for expansion, we have an idea of how much headway we have within the existing non-local, like, so if something's a tier 1, it would be a 100% regional. How much capacity do we know how much we actually have, or do we have, I guess, for something to come in? Because you mentioned, like, if we don't have the money, then something else would have to happen, right?
So I guess my plan after this is to take, so I gave an example. So I dropped everything that we have done as expansion or extensions, frequency wise, in this to just kind of see where they would line out. I would like layout. So I would then want to take this and actually run the numbers to see what the burden would be. And a lot of them match, because a lot of you, when we met back in the fall, we were saying 50% as kind of that match, and that's kind of where it fits. You look at this breakdown for the most part, and the logic associated with them basically following in the tier 2 category. And then looking at the GRTC, I guess, sustainability using the other funding sources. I don't have the answer today as far as what that does to the budget, but I know that when we did do the 10-year projections, we assumed there was no additional funding, and all of that would come from our other funding sources. So that's 100%. So I mean, you can see that does make it to a certain point all in with our revenue sources and no additional local contribution to it. But we know that eventually that end to that was at 5 year, whatever the gap amount is in there. So I would like to take that same model, put the 50% in there as a new revenue source, and be able to run it again and see what that does to our revenue sources.
Gotcha. So I guess with these examples provided, though, I guess was it X effective date? So it would be anything that comes in after it gets approved. So everything we currently have.
Right, because everything we've already put out there, except for the micro transit zones, which are on their last year of pilot, we have reapplied for grants. Now we don't know if we'll find out in April if we get them or not. And at that point, we would then work with you guys to determine, is this something that we want to move forward with? If we weren't to get the grant, then it would be at this model, and of course, looking at the budget to be able to afford it. Or if we don't get the funding from you guys, letting you know like what the actual amount we could put on the street. Does that make sense?
So let me just see if I understand. So anything that is being covered by a grant right now would be something we would want to go through this process.
Correct. Yes. Which all these routes on here are the ones for the most part. So the 7s went in, they were grants. Everything that's ending on a grant has either been reapplied for a new grant, but the conversation still is looking at the ones that would be ending, what is the model associated with them? So anything that we've put in since 2020, I guess including what other one is? Yeah, I guess 2024-ish.
Think of anything that would be tier 1, if these examples are all tier 2.
Yeah. I mean, the BRT. I can't, because I feel like these are kind of the core ones, like.
Yeah, so pretty much limited to BRT.
And I'll run all the ones that we already have, like all of our routes, just to see what the tier is, even if it's not really, even though they're grandfathered in.
I was just thinking maybe a potential look back as a potential tier 1 would be things related to the permanent transfer station, things like that truly have a regional context. I don't know.
Oh, the capital actually just only addresses the operating piece.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about the capital piece too. Yeah. I mean, I'll bring that back for April, because the large capital items for the most part do have CVTA, local regional dollars with them, not so much. But we did talk about things general local, like buses, for example, that we would still like to match the CVTA with additional like local request to go with that. But I can bring that
Capital's a
formally
little
in
bit
May.
easier, because, you know, it's that you can fund it with a grant and get it built. And the maintenance ongoing, with the exception of the downtown transfer station. Thinking like a bus stop is pretty limited.
Right, right. It's not,
It's really the operating costs that is a big hit to the budget.
and it's annual opposed to.
Mhm.
All right, so with that, if anyone, I guess you don't have any questions, the recommendation is for development committee to recommend it to, I guess,
Yeah, I feel like
the finance.
for me, I feel like I probably need some time to talk to my board, I guess, just because
Okay.
there's a budget impact, but then the city is also not present.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that'd be a tough with some of the big projects in the city. I think we probably have to be good to talk about this.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
people will need some time to
okay.
digest.
So it'll also go to finance. So we can get their feedback as well.
That'll be good.
My understanding is Mr. Donald will be on at 2,
Yeah, Joe said he was gonna.
and he's on both of them. So.
Free of the questions about how it impacts each of the jurisdictions, at least from my perspective, I do have a comment, question that I didn't see the word prioritization in there anywhere, and I think it's on purpose. And my hope would be that, or my understanding is this has nothing to do with prioritizing projects, simply categorizing them. Is that a fair statement?
I think, and it is in here somewhere, like depending on where they fall, like as a regional priority, or if it's in like an established plan.
Yeah, I'm thinking exclusive to the tier 1, 2, 3.
No,
The unintended consequence of actually creating territories of priority that aren't intended, saying, because some of the most important projects will be local. You know, some of the most impactful opportunities would be local. But I didn't want that to be a potential direction that it went simply by categorizing them
No.
as.
no, it's not a priority based on the category, no. Just the funding split is what you would get from the category.
Bringing back a recommendation by April, the April Development Committee meeting too soon.
No, but I mean, we may need some additional information. I think like with this, there's no dollar figure. And then, and I know there's some future tier 1 type projects. I guess the question is, do we even have capacity with where we are for a tier 1
Yeah.
to be 100% supported?
Yeah.
I think those are some of the, but it could maybe come back by April, but
I'm like,
they need some additional.
Any further information, the recommendation may come from this committee in April.
Or it's at least worth the discussion, but I think that'll give me time to have some further discussions, but.
And I think that's where the budget piece would definitely play a factor. If it's beyond like capacity, then we would need additional revenue regardless to be able to afford it.
And the range is just a negotiation thing, or is it the range tied to some criteria?
Yeah, there's criteria specifically to.
I'm assuming that as each of these come forward for us, the development committee to review.
You would review.
Item 7.2, it says we determine spectrum placement. That's coming to us with a recommendation, and we talk about it and we agree with what the recommended tier placement is.
Right, so if this was adopted, and I can still do it, but we'll find out in April what we actually got from the state. So with that, we can show at least the grant, but then when the grant steps down, kind of remember the Gooch one I showed you guys where it started off with the grant amount and what the local amount would be, and then eventually it's a step down. So what would the total amount be in 5 years for the jurisdiction? Run that same exact exercise so you could see it for every single one of the routes. And then you guys could say, well, does it make sense for the 7A, 7B to be 50% because it does X, Y, and Z? This is the criteria we put it in, and then we can shift it up. Maybe it needs more regional dollars.
You're getting us in the vicinity with that background.
Correct. All of that would be given to you within, a matrix.
Yeah, and then, I mean, only other thing I would say with this, it might be good to have within the framework's good, just defining for clarity, like what each pot of money, regional, like includes this.
Okay.
Just to make, because I think that's the only thing I really have pressure for, because I think you define the tiers later. Yeah. Yep. Local, regional. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty thorough. We would need to see what the impacts are. We want to make sure that, we want to make sure the city's
Okay.
fully party.
You know, my difference right now with cities also, they don't have any current expansion.
Oh, future, tied to the future. Yeah.
The funding split adjustment factors, are those data driven? That's almost the last page, 4. Step 2.
Yes. Just for the one thing first. Market reach, yeah. That's where the service origination, like where the plan came from as well. This does remind me, so we have been getting requests, I did more, but a few different, and I figured this should also come to this body as we get different requests for service. One example is, who did we meet with next week, Joe? Lego being out there, and they're almost done in terms of development, has come to us and requested some service. So we are looking at kind of just alternatives for discussion, and of course include the relevant counties in that discussion.
Are they looking at private sector money potentially to help fund? Okay.
I mean, a lot of these places just need transit to get employees. So with that, we will address what we can, but I mean, that one in particular,
Yeah.
creative in
A
terms.
lot of places ask, I guess from my experience, but they don't necessarily
Yes,
offer the
Yeah.
funding part.
that's right.
Yeah.
Or they're enthusiastic about it. And when you start talking money,
Yeah.
they go silent.
But they like to locate off the transit corridor when transit is critical.
Where it's available land largely.
No.
Right. So I think if there's some others, there's some like hospitals who have reached out to us, additional community colleges have reached out to us for additional service. So I just want to continue to bring that to you guys. And like this also would go with this framework back to your question as far as what's coming from the private sector. I think this gives us kind of the lean on that, yes, this is your request. However, we do have a policy that if you are requesting service, that there should be some private funding that comes to it unless the jurisdiction itself is going to be working with you.
Okay, so we'll take this back and digest it and have conversations, and it'll go to finance for their consideration as well. But at our next meeting, we'll be ready to, well, we may have questions that come about as we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think I'd keep it on for discussion for the next meeting.
Okay.
Hopefully we can work towards something.
And if we need to do another workshop, I know everyone's availability is tight. We can also set that up only because we'll get the responses, but also we can be able to put whatever you guys are able to digest into the budget inputs for our FY27 that we're working with.
Yeah, I think we understand the timing of it. I guess just make sure finance is aware that I think when we went after the grants, I think it was contingent upon having what do we call it, a framework
Cost participation.
before accepting the grants formally.
And then we'll do an MOU once all of it's.
Yeah.
Great. That's a lot of work. Okay, next on the agenda is the Regional Public Transportation Plan for FY27 through 20.
it's just a brief update on that one. So we're working on FY27. The plan with that is just to do maintenance of service, and then what we'll work out when we find out our actual April awards for what goes towards capital support for CVTA. And what is the actual amount we need for maintenance of service to be that particular funding source for our FY27 budget. So that's 27. So 28 is more so kind of the in-depth one that we're also kicking off now. We are working through the TPO TAC first, as well as have a lot of parallel efforts going to kind of align into that. And so we know that we have the expansion needs that we've already prioritized, either from this board or just the jurisdictions and their plans from our transit strategic plan. But our transit strategic plan did not include other rural or other of the 6 regions or 6 jurisdictions as part of our TSP. So since we are doing updates regularly now to CVTA, we want to make sure our plan is incorporating at least input from all of the jurisdictions and understanding that our region is all 9. So with that, we are taking the rural study and then also meeting with all 9 jurisdictions to understand their service needs. That will happen. And then there will also be in the summer a core, what are we calling it? A core workshop, core network design, which I think Barb may have been one of the only ones who participated from this group. And that is, I think, roughly about a 3-day effort, depending on the size of the jurisdiction, the amount of transit that they have. And it's kind of a revamp of the system to see what's changed. We'll include zoning, we'll include any future land use changes, any development that's going to be happening, so that we can end up coming up with a 5-year plan that we can then react to. Of course, it'll all be looked at from a constrained perspective, as well as an unconstrained perspective. And then having this framework also will be helpful. So if there is something that is either constrained or unconstrained, knowing that the jurisdictions also have to bring a certain share if it's not service that's currently in play. So that'll all feed into what will go into just conversations in September or October with like the board retreat, and have kind of a formal plan where we will also be updating CVTA. And Plan RVA is a partner in this, so that it's a regional effort that also goes into the TAC efforts as well, as long as their long-range plan. So we'll end up with a new regional transit need for the region that GRTC and our board can then react to, as well as if there's funding needs, that'll also feed into any sort of revenue opportunities that we're currently investigating, also with a different study that's being done.
So because it's 5 years, it's not replacing that vision study. Remember that regional
2040 or something? Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah.
This is more kind of building off the TSP or expanding the TSP.
Yeah. And the TSP is also 10 years. So it's kind of more of the near term version of it. Also, the TSP it's done, but microtransit was new and isn't really looked at in there. It's just an opportunity to really look at all of that stuff. And also in this, what requested, okay, if the BRT comes online, whether it's the Western or the North-South BRT, what needs to change on our current network so that it kind of, we did it the last time where it met up at stations. Also, a lot of South Side looks different than it did today. West Broad Street looks different than it did today. Virginia Center Commons looks different. So like that stuff needs to be incorporated into these BRT efforts to see what local routes need to change in the next 5 years to properly align and benefit.
Is it kind of like that revamp?
Yeah,
Years ago?
the same group.
So question, when, I guess with this effort, and you said it's gonna be like a 3-day.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess in addition to where the service is will there also be a discussion of kind of what's expected at each stop? Or is that a different conversation that we would have? Like,
I guess you mean like infrastructure?
Infrastructure. Yeah.
No, they won't be looking at infrastructure, but I mean, we're happy to have that conversation going separately.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine. I was just wondering. I know we're doing a lot with
That ETI plan probably still.
Yes.
But yeah,
a goal of 75%. I think it was.
Yes.
yeah. It's one of the challenges. I mean, I'll just speak, and you guys probably had the same issue at Chesterfield, is when you add the route before the infrastructure's there. A lot of times the route starts as a pilot or was funded, but then quickly you're now behind
Yeah.
on some of the basic infrastructure. So that's one of the challenges we're kind of working with like the 19, the one expansions is all right. We have riders.
Yeah.
Now we have a lot of stops. Now we're playing the retrofit catch up game. And at some point we'll get there, but that I don't know. I was just wondering.
I know it's some of it's like the chicken or the eggs. I know like with the routes we've done for Chesterfield, it's like we want to see the demand, and also we're assuming when we put a stop in that that's where they're going to want to get off. But then like we realize, oh wait, they need to be 100 feet further north or something like that. So you could put the infrastructure in first, but sometimes it changes when it's a brand new route.
Yeah, because even
made that mistake before where we've gotten a grant for a new service that included marketing, operating, and infrastructure. And you have to wait on the infrastructure just to see how things shake out. And yeah, I've decided, and then there's the deadline associated with the grants. You really can't turn around the infrastructure as fast as those grants will allow.
Yeah, a lot of times you need right of way and other things that don't come easy.
You can't do it in a year.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Lego, but for example, you want transit. Is there an area where that's already provided in your plan that's under construction that can accommodate transit? Which you might not have done that because you weren't planning. I don't know. And those are some of the challenges, I think, from a planning perspective. I didn't know if there was an opportunity to kind of address and try to roll some of that in. Is that the two need to kind of also be thought about at the same time, as opposed to just throw a sign up and there's a bus stop.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they could, depending on like the surrounding land use and maybe some ridership projections, determine like what kind of infrastructure would need to be, or if any, at the stop. And maybe we could include some of that in the scope.
Yeah, because like right now we think things differently. The 19 came in, but now with newer developments coming in, we're trying to get right of way dedicated so that if we do need to put a station or a bus stop there, we can. It's just putting some things like that where especially if we're talking all 9 jurisdictions, at some point you want transit, or you may want transit as to serve these future development areas. If we're looking at comp plans, to at least inform and try to just work with the localities so that those things.
They do get to that level, because I remember you guys got a lot of comments about why was Henrico putting this way over here when the line goes down here and this would be great, or like, why are you building so far from the road? To try and think together. So yeah, we are asking for those individuals in Henrico to come to the table so that we can have that input to it, to know like what developments you're doing.
Yeah, just listening to it, it feels very combination of proactive and reactive.
Yeah.
From a proactive standpoint, comp plan changes, updates, expected new developments, but the reactive is until Virginia Center comments or pick the project actually goes into place, it's really hard to finalize. So it seems like the proactive side is localities making commitments that, or the system deciding this is what is worthy of expansion if this comp plan shakes out this way, but then specific where on the ground do things go can't happen too far in advance of actually the development plans.
Springline is a good example of that, where we got them to dedicate a easement so that we could circulate on site, and here's where the stop will be.
Yep.
And
I was thinking that.
It was our best guess.
It was,
and
if you were to do it today, it would look very different.
Yeah. So it's hard to do proactively.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and I bring it up mainly because like a day like today where the weather stinks, when you drive, you see people at a lot of those areas with some with umbrellas and others without, and
standing in the mud, which is also important.
Yeah, so it or even yesterday when it was hot, So
Mhm.
those are the things that come up that we're actively fighting afterwards
Yeah,
collectively.
and it's not as easy as people think that you just go out, throw some concrete down and throw in a bench.
So with that, we do not have it on here, but there was supposed to be a sub bullet related to ETI update. Can we have her do an update?
With that all said, I'll wait for him to put it up, but I've been working on ETI for a little over a year now. So you guys an update, a lot of what you guys were just talking about is exactly what I'm working on. Kind of being intentional with where we plan for improvements along our stops. Obviously, this plan has been implemented before my time, and just kind of taking it by the reins and seeing how it can be improved. We get more and more data. In the last year or so, our engineering team did an entire system-wide survey at all of the stops, determining what level of ADA compliance each stop has, as well as the level of engineering efforts needed to bring those stops either into just ADA compliance or bringing those into ADA compliance with an amenity. So with all of that said, right now we have 484 stops that have some sort of amenity. 366 have a bench and 118 have a shelter. With the ETI plan, 70 shelters have been installed. Since I've been here, 34 have been installed. It's really nice driving around because it really starts to feel like they're popping up. And then 71 benches have been installed. This one is very recent. This is right in front of City Hall. It's very exciting to see this. We just got plans submitted for the stop here for this one on the other side, going eastbound at Broad Ninth as well.
Quick question, is the 70, and is that 70 included in the 118?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's been quite an improvement. Exactly what was said. A lot of people really think it is as simple as putting in concrete. All of the bus stops are very unique. There are a lot of constraints that we have to address. One that we're working through right now is one of the stops, Broad Street, Kings Broad and Brown. There's a brick pattern that's from 1992 street upgrades that we're trying to figure out the engineering for that. So it is very complicated. It's very complex, and each stop is its own set of project.
Did you hear her say 1992 was historic?
I don't want to say that because I was born in 1991, so.
I'm dinosauric.
We're prehistoric.
And just for
She said
scale.
1942.
It's a 92.
I was actually gonna let it go.
City Hall is, I think Daniel was on the meeting, he said that. You can kind of see it right here. This is from 1992. So kind of one of the issues is we're trying to figure out whether or not it makes sense to have an ADA pad that's part concrete, part brick. What is the pro requirements for that? So it gets to be really complex. A lot of problem solving, creative problem solving as we go through all of these. And for the scale, I think you guys are very familiar. We have a lot of stops, over 1,500 stops in the system. Right now, through the ETI plan, we have 141 stops that have been improved already. We've because we have so much data from this survey, we've taken a very data-driven way to prioritize stops. So right now we have 78 stops that have been prioritized, and that's based on a couple of different parameters. So that's ridership, of course, equity needs. The city has given us data, and this is obviously specific to the city, but given us data for heat vulnerability. So that's very much the south side, east end, and parts of north side. Been working very closely with the city for the people's budget as well, so those are incorporated to this priority list. We've gotten coordination complete with the Richmond Public Libraries. So we'll have our first stop on library property approved, hopefully within the next couple of months. I've got board approval for that. So just been working a lot of this and clearing the way for these priority stops to move forward. I've been working really hard to get this to a point where it's a rolling implementation where while we're designing, while we're coordinating VDOT land use permits, and with other jurisdictions, whether that be with, we have 23 stops ready for construction. Some of those are private properties. So the Walmart on Forest Hill, we're meeting with them, that will be ready once the shelter comes in. And then most importantly is that we have the same number of stops essentially that are in review, complete, in the process to even be approved for construction. Very exciting stuff. Sorry, going too fast. So these are just visualizations of all the complete installations. I think the purple are benches, the green are shelters. It's really exciting to see visually how much of an impact this makes. It's really fun to drive around and see it, but putting it on that really shows the extent of the improvements. These are, I keep going too quickly. These are pending installations, so that's stops that are either in construction currently or not used to exposure, sorry. These are either in construction, in process construction, or about to be in construction. Right now, we're working primarily in Henrico County, and we're trying to take on installing a VDOT right of way, which has proven to be a little bit of a challenge, just some coordination necessary, but we are nearly done with St. Joseph's Hill. There are 2 stops there will be receiving shelters, and then working along Broad Street. Broad and 50th, this one's really big want and need, so that one should be coming up soon as well. Within the city, we also have stops approved for construction in the Chamberlain area. We're trying to work in corridors for efficiency's sake, and then Hull Street as well. They just submitted plans to the city for review at downtown, like I said, Broad and 9th, Lee and First, Main and First, and then after that, they'll be focusing on Southside Richmond. And I mentioned kind of adjusting how we prioritize. We got a lot of information from the survey. So stops have been prioritized using ridership, equity metrics, key vulnerability data from the city, ADA accessibility gaps, whether or not it's close to being compliant. Sometimes you'll see where, if it's ADA compliant, it's the crosswalks under 2% or 2% or less. And so some of them will be, 2.05. And so it's very easy to adjust that. We also looked at existing infrastructure and corridor importance. So this I wanted to know because that's kind of what you guys were thinking about right before I think came up here, but been trying to focus a lot on creating this connectivity between local stops and future service, whether that be the North-South BRT. We're working very closely with Henrico County for the Western Extension. Just be mindful that, it's not just the poles. We need to make sure the whole network works together. So just being mindful of outside projects as well and what all of the development will look like long term. And also wanted to note, with prioritizing in the way that we have been able to order shelters for all of the stops that have been prioritized. Of course, the shelters take the better part of a year to be delivered. So a lot of these will probably be seen in the next 6 to 9 months. Most likely, I ordered them in November, so quite a lead time on those, unfortunately. Funding, with the survey data, we get a really good idea of about how much their each stop could cost. So we have processed. You're going after the easier stops, so that's lower engineering efforts necessary. So a lot of them, you'll think of downtown where it's really just cutting up the sidewalk, placing in reinforcement, very simple. Those are typically around $25,000 a stop, but they're also complex stops that are equally as important. You'll think of maybe the Jink Road corridor where it really is just a bus stop, talking about but where there's no sidewalks there at the time. Those improvements exceed $40,000. Some of them are upwards of 80 and 90. What's really exciting is I just submitted a grant application with Henrico County for the Community Development Block Grant for a handful of stops in Henrico County that are more complex stops. I'm really excited to see this come to life. I think it's really important to address the people that are standing, essentially in a ditch with the bus. Again, trying to create connectivity there. I've also submitted a pre-application for merit grant funding for this general ETI implementation.
Quick question, back on that. You said complex stop improvements typically exceed 40, and then you said some are 80 or 90, which is far in excess of 40.
Yeah, yes.
Do you have, when you categorize it as complex stop improvement cost, like what an average above 40 is, or is it that's closer? Is it 60? Is it, I'm just curious, because
the average is around 60. And I'm trying to figure out at what point, because I'm relying on information prepared by our engineering team. At what point obviously some of the stops are just more expensive because of where they are. So for example, VDOT stops are just generally more expensive because we have to deal with VDOT permitting and compliance costs. But then some of them it's grade issues. Some of them have no drainage, so we're doing curb, gutter, drainage. So then on top of just more expensive construction and more expensive engineering. So the ratings really is just a combination of the construction and the engineering together. Right-of-way acquisition is another issue where, obviously that's a whole other expense on top of that than the actual cost of the purchase itself.
well, it's just nuance, but as we look at something that's rolled up, it's helpful to us to know, because I look at that as like 25 to 40, that's not a big gap.
Right.
It's like easy versus complex. It's just like, so if the average is 60 or more, it'd probably be helpful to, know that. So that in our brain, we're like, yeah, that's more than double generally the cost.
The
Yeah.
ones that are that high are really outliers. There's not many of them. And so I was just fearful of putting that in there because there is a lot of nuance in it for sure. But yeah, I can get an average. I would say it's an average of 60 or so, 60,000. I would say, I'm very familiar with the ones that we just got application for, but it was 4 stops and we are asking for $265,000. But that includes construction, light engineering. Some of them already have developed plans. Permit compliance, they're all right away. So there's additional costs, whether that's MOT. The MOT is a lot more costly within that right of way.
Like I say, it'll just help us with confusion later on when we're saying what?
Yes, yeah. It is quite the sticker shock a little bit sometimes when, if I say it exceeds $40,000 and then I'm sorry.
Yeah, $1 million exceeds $1 million exceeds 40,000. If we're in the vicinity of what that expectation is, it helps us.
This is just something kind of showing our planned expenses through the end of the project, which includes June 30th, 2027. Looking at installations, trying to make sure that we meet our goals. One of the issues that I run into, talking about that is that the metrics for the plan itself are very baseline percent coverage for the system. What I've run into is an issue, just trying to say this, but a lot of the high ridership stops already had a bench in place. So if I replace a shelter, it's net zero. So just trying to figure out metrics for that, and then being able to achieve the goals based on any changes that we have to do for metrics based on that. So done some research into this, and some other agencies, I think it was Seattle, do a point system for amenities. So they went very in depth with this with point for trash bin, lighting, shelters, benches. And to alleviate that issue, I've done point system very basic with a bench for 1 point, shelter is 2 for a roof line bench, which negates the problem where these replacements or replacing benches with shelters that will have still a net positive on that stop improvement. So this table with the goals for our installations will be a little skewed just because it was to achieve that goal, which just needs to be adjusted. For our outlook, continuing installations, working with our jurisdictional partners, engineering, permitting, it's all a very lengthy process. I think we're at a point now where we're really starting to roll with construction while we're obtaining permits, while we're completing plans, getting approvals for those. Our engineering team, I think, has done a really good job of knowing and anticipating what the city is looking for, what the county is looking for, and VDOT as well. I work very closely with our jurisdictional partners, whether that's going after funding, maintaining plans and permits. I would really like to continue working on these complex stops. I think we're going to very quickly run out of the easier stops based on the survey. But obviously, this will take quite a bit of effort. Permitting, and obviously funding constraints as well. So, anybody have any questions?
It seems like we've done.
Huh?
Seems like we've done a lot. Yeah.
I'm trying. Yes, it's been a lot of fun to figure out how all this works. It is really rewarding when it's been out and installed, especially. I'm really excited about stop pairs, both having shelters. So it's very nice to see all of it come to life. It is quite a lot of work. So
Great job. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda. Just want to make sure everyone was kind of done with the regional public transportation plan. Right. Okay. Service planning update.
First, I'm gonna kick it to Mr. Hernandez to kind of give an outlook on just how the reliability is looking out there with the service change that just occurred, as well as what our operator outlook numbers are for sharing.
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
I can do it for you, but
It's a good thing I was typing something up for this anyway. So we currently have 16 operators in training off of 2 cohorts that started in January and February. So we're expecting them to graduate next month. Excited about that. We're going to have a cohort start every month. That's the goal, is to continue this trend. Since we implemented the service change on the 22nd, we've actually seen some slight improvements in our on-time performance, like roughly 1 to 3% on average across 2.5 weeks so far. And we're seeing less cancellations. We've had actually a period of continuous days that we just had no cancellations. And so that's just speaking volume on the service change that we put into place. And even when we've had some cancellations, they're very isolated. They're not widespread like they were prior to the change. So that's a great thing to see with our service delivery, and we'll continue providing updates on that.
So as a complementary, mode, we are looking at Kevin and Catherine Newman have worked with Uber to kind of revamp the service we did have. And so look definitely within restricted guidelines on a as needed basis, individuals who, whether it's significant frequency impacts or if we have implemented like an actual span reduction in the service, we will be offering, they can contact GRTC and we'll do a review to see if we can offer them an Uber ride. It would be within just the alignment of the route that is no longer available. So that's something that we are working on putting in place during the current service adjustments. Based on the outlook of operators, we had a conversation earlier with the current class projections and even potential need to maybe add in additional classes per month to kind of ramp us back up to where we need to be. With that, we are looking at closer to like late spring service being put back into place. And we'll continue to monitor that if we do end up realizing additional operators before that. But based on like attrition and the rate of it taking between 8 and 12 weeks to bring an operator on, the alignment of putting it back earlier most likely will not happen, but we are definitely putting in something in place to help those who are dependent on the service. We have gone, like, for example, in the 87, which is on the south side, where the route got, the frequency went back to like 1 hour, as well as we reduced it. The individual used to use it to get back from work, and they're not able to get back to work. So that's an example of what we would consider kind of a need for the service.
When do you think that Uber offer will be available?
We're aiming to have it no later than the end of the month. They just have to program it to work.
How does that get communicated to people?
We will have to communicate it to them. And we haven't, we've had the idea of it, but we haven't worked on a communication plan yet with our comms team.
So more as you get calls like from that particular individual.
Right. I think we would put out there, like, these particular routes were impacted and these are particular reasons why, please contact this number. Or our customer service has also just gotten calls in.
Would that be something provided on the buses too?
But
I don't know whether it's a QR code in the like app.
yeah, they have like a infotainment screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we did with COVID, right?
The screens.
No, the way that
Oh, the actual service, the early morning, late night was offered to the whole network at the time. Yeah, that was, I don't think we really had it anywhere except for maybe on our website. I don't think it was on the.
on a flyer. I don't know.
It was on a flyer, okay.
It's probably not gonna be on every route or just certain routes.
No, it would just be
Yeah.
certain
So it
routes.
could be targeted.
We can do that, yeah.
Great, sounds good. Any more questions related to service? Great, next item is the full board agenda.
You want to bring up the full agenda? We just wanted to give the opportunity because we know that we only bring one action item to you guys, but we made sure we sent all of them out. If there was any additional questions on any of the action items for the board that will end up being on the consent agenda, if they are moved forward by the finance, but since you guys can follow in finance, give you guys the opportunity to ask any questions. I just wanted to switch over to finance so you can see the additional action items. Thanks. You just hit the other tab, the November 9th, 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the additional action items. Older version.
Any questions about the action items on finance or between that and what we took action on will be what's considered with full board. Then we have new business. Adrian, I was thinking about our conversation. Do you want to just introduce that? Sort of like we talked about this expansion framework. I think at least introducing the RideFinders. So that we can have a little time to digest it. It might be
Sure.
good. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, it was for the resolution establishing the transit access partnership at RideFinders. So remember at the last board meeting, Cheryl had made the announcement about the Community Foundation grant. That's $25,000 grant that GRT was for a position. And so what we're requesting to move forward with is GRTC is going to match that grant. So it would be the salary of an actual position. They have, the way it works with RideFinders is that they have a employee lease agreement with GRTC. So like all of their positions exist under GRTC, but then they're leased to RideFinders under a contract under our board. And then they pay us through grants for those positions. So we do all the payroll, like IT support, all some of the finance stuff as well. So under that model, we wanted to officially establish this individual, but it wouldn't be under GRTC just because we are not the 501c3. We don't want to do fundraising on PATH. That's something that is a mode shift method that RideFinders can do outreach on. So with that, this particular board, so I was trying to explain to Barb, actually wears two separate hats. You guys are the GRTC board, but you also are the RideFinders board separately, but they are aligned as the same people for purposes of transit in this region. So as far as the articles of incorporation and the RideFinders promotes ride sharing, transportation, demand management, air quality improvements, congestion reduction, any related public benefit activities, which would include seeking funding related to things that do mode shift for air quality purposes. So you guys have the oversight and the governance to establish formally, basically fundraising efforts under RideFinders and then formally establishing that position. And once that happens, GRTC can then put that under our employee lease agreement contract that then goes to RideFinders. So this was a resolution to formally establish the Transit Access Partnership Program that we have already been kind of working together to operate in without a person. This would just be a dedicated development person. GRTC in the interim had, as we are having several, like we had our event yesterday at Chipotle for 25% between 4 and 8 p.m. at Chipotle sales. You had the code, would go to us for fundraising. We have another event on the 27th, brewery, and we have our big July event. So this individual will just focus all their time to getting this stuff happening. So this would establish the Transit Access Partnership Program strategically under RideFinders, as well as create the Community and Corporate Relations Manager position. And then last piece is confirms employment via the employee lease agreement, preserving RideFinders supervisory authority. The person would report the executive director. Since we're already coordinating with GRTC, it formally establishes a coordination only with Chief Development Officer and those underneath like Marcom, and then authorizes the executive director to officially do the onboarding, coordination practices, and implementation of this. And I actually am reading from a resolution. So this was originally going to be on the agenda that we wanted to brief you guys on it before, because you are the ones who can actually make the recommendation as the governance of the RideFinders. Is that enough?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was suggesting that we have a little bit of time just to read through this and understand it before we really make a recommendation to the full board. That was how I felt, my comfort level with it, but certainly something for everyone to consider. And if there's questions about it, we should discuss that. Otherwise, I would be suggesting that we take action at our next meeting in April.
So is this a part-time position?
Yeah, especially given that we're required to, recommend to the full board things like this, right? So you're suggesting that we take this up more deliberately and recommend in the April meeting back to the board. Okay. Would anything be brought up to the full board next week that this is on our plate?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean,
Makes
practically between
sense to me.
development and finance.
Yeah. What we also kind of offered in some of the briefings was that if you guys wanted, because I feel like just giving an overview of your roles as the RideFinders board, I don't know if you guys want to take a step back and also just be educated on their bylaws and all of that.
I just thought letting them know that this is something we're going to talk about in April in the development meeting is enough.
Okay.
At this stage, because I don't want to start saying what our goals are with this. So we'd rather do more.
Because we've already have a report out.
Not report out, just saying that the development and considering it. for full recommendation in April then, if I'm understanding you correctly. You want the development committee to go to the full board and just let them know that you guys are gonna be reviewing the recommendation of taking.
I thought that was generally what we were looked at to do. So
So at the next full board, you would just, or I would
Make that announcement.
I would let people know that we're
we're taking this.
reviewing this resolution establishing the tap
That's it.
at RideFinders.
That's it.
Just as part of your update.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably won't say a whole lot more than that because unless I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, so clarification though, is it a part-time job or a full-time?
No, it's a full-time position, yes.
And then it's funded via the grant or how's
So the
it,
grant is for 25,000 and then GRTC will fund.
has to fund the rest of it? Okay, that's what I was trying to get clear. So it's a full-time position. So is the grant a one-time grant?
It is.
So essentially GRTC's adding funding for another full-time position. Going
Correct.
forward.
Correct. That's true.
Okay.
And it is in the budget.
Okay.
And you, maybe at our April meeting, were you saying that you would kind of give us just sort of this overview about our role? The board
Development, wherever you guys would want to. I would have Neil do it though, not me.
Full board, because all of the members are of RideFinders. Just add it to the full board.
Yeah.
Yeah, for RideFinders, okay, that-
that might help us at development too, though, to understand how the full board.
Yeah, we can have them come to us. Maybe the bigger one, we don't have to do, it could be like in June after budget. If you want to dive into policy stuff later.
So is this being brought up at finance too? Or,
Since it's the budget piece that you just identified, yes.
so, okay, all right. Sure.
I'm gonna add Neil to present to development on RideFinders at some point.
Yeah. That'll be like a little dry run before the full board. Okay,
We'll let them know your recommendation. Your non-recommendation.
thank you.
And Mr. Donald did join at 2:18. I wrote that down.
Okay. New business. Is there any other new business?
We,
Okay,
well,
Are you guys open to Wednesday at 3:00 of changing this meeting so we can have more members attend? I know we sent out a poll, didn't get a lot of feedback for the next date.
I think I can.
I didn't want to put y'all on the spot. If you guys can leave, I'm gonna send an email after this again. It will be a new time and a new date
Just
for
shifting
development
it from Thursday to Wednesday.
to Wednesday. It
Because
should be 3:00. I'll send an email before I put it out. I'm gonna send, but that's gonna be the one that sends out so we can make sure most of the committee members can attend. But we didn't want to change it if it presents us.
same week, just.
Same week, second Wednesday at 3 p.m. And I'll send out a follow-up email. You said hard.
That's generally doable for me.
Okay.
Long term, yes. I just have to see what the
I
shot,
got you. Okay.
what can be.
So I'll send up a follow-up email and send you the dates, because if you guys agree, then.
our
I'll just put
board
it on
meets on the second.
Wednesday.
Well, they did this month. March is a little weird. Yeah, I think it was just weird for March. But
I'm gonna follow up and send you guys an email
Sounds
to get the confirmation. That'd be great.
sorry.
No, fine.
The only thing I was gonna say is, I guess maybe is it worth you mentioning what happened at CBTA funding with
Full project?
development related projects with, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so very exciting at the CBTA authority meeting where we got funding on all three of actually our kind of top priority projects moving forward. So we got $15 million on the western extension for the BRT, $10 million on the downtown transfer hub. And that one, working very, very closely with the city, was very timely because that particular project, we were looking for aligning funding for matching the build grant. Because the build grant we went in for 25 million, it was due like the week after. And so that would have brought us up to about 50% funding with the funding we already had. So we really appreciate the regional support for that one. And then the last one, North-South BRT, this is a project piece the city, actually right out here, Belt Boulevard had been funded in Smart Scale last round, and there was a gap that the city applied for some improvements for that particular portion of the north-south BRT. So that'll be dedicated lanes that we can use even before the actual stations come in and all of that, because the stations are all moving forward. And then with the downtown transfer hub, we are working right now through the RFQ efforts. We are currently meeting as a review team. And then we will be moving forward if we were moving forward as far as getting the RFP on the street. Hopefully the goal is actually by the end of March to have the RFP ready to go. So that'll be ready and closed out by fall. Lots moving forward. I do want to talk, I guess, one thing with the Western, Laura is like ran numbers lots and lots of times, but that one is very, very exciting because we are so close with that one as far as funding. We'll find out through the TPO because we applied for STBG with Henrico County on that a significant amount for that's for the dedicated lanes. No, it's TSP. It's the TSP. So that's a big piece. And so whatever is remainder, we're actually working with the state to hopefully actually fill that particular gap. Even before, well, working through Smart Scale, but we might know something even before that.
You said that was 15 million.
15 million. It's 15 million that for the CBTA, but we applied for 16.9 million through STBG as well. So we'll find that out next month. So lots of money.
TSP.
What is
that?
TS? Yeah, what is that?
The transit signal prioritization.
Thank you. I know the other transit strategic plan.
Yeah, we don't throw those in the room.
So I was like,
Yeah, sorry, the lights, yeah. And then the CBTA was for dedicated lanes.
Oh, buses, I think. The stations.
Yes, thank you, stations. Thank you.
If that's funded, the only thing left would be the buses or additional.
So that one, we're not estimating a significant need for buses for that one. I think it's like maybe one more and it fits within our current replacement, but we could still apply for funds for it. So what's remaining is just the remainder of construction for the most part, and then a piece of PE. Like 60 to 100 is what we're also including within the state request. That was the only major capital application for the whole state. For Marion.
wow.
Interesting. That's surprising.
Yeah.
Except they only get up to 4.
Say what?
Only get like up to 4 a year for majoring.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know what that means on the odds, but
Application cycle every year. It's kind of how we did most of them at one time, but now it seems like, whew,
That's a lot. Yeah.
Again?
Yeah, you're on a break.
we sort of took this year off.
Thank you for that update.
yeah, we'll find out about build in the summer.
All righty. Any other new business? All right, we'll adjourn then. So finance can.